Life often feels heavier than it needs to be. Every choice, every word, every glance seems to carry a weight far beyond what it should. We move through our days convinced that the world is keeping score, measuring our worth, tallying our failures, applauding our successes. Yet the Stoics remind us that the universe is indifferent. Our power lies not in controlling events, but in mastering our own responses. The freedom that comes from clarity, courage, and virtue transforms each moment into an opportunity for insight and presence. There is a quiet strength in stepping back from the compulsive seriousness that governs so much of our lives. By observing our judgments and recognizing what is truly within our control, we move more lightly through the world. Life does not demand perfection. It calls only for honesty, attention, and resilience. The more we practice this perspective, the more we realize that meaning is not something to chase. It is something we uncover in the very act of living with integrity, awareness, and intentionality. Every day presents a choice to act with intention or to be carried along by anxiety, expectation, and imagined stakes. Stoicism teaches that the arena that matters is the one inside our own minds. By cultivating presence, by observing without clinging, we find a steadiness no external event can shake. Moments once weighed down by fear or judgment begin to reveal their depth. Life, in its ordinary flow, offers clarity, insight, and quiet joy to those willing to notice. Life is a theater in which we step onto a stage written by invisible scripts, some imposed by society, some imagined by our own mind. From the moment we awaken, thoughts begin their relentless commentary. What will others think of me today? Did I perform well enough yesterday? Will my efforts matter in the long run? Each thought piles onto the next, constructing invisible walls around our perception of reality. Yet these stories, as compelling as they feel, are entirely mental constructs. They exist only because we feed them attention, belief, and energy. Observe them as clouds drifting across the vast sky of consciousness. Notice how they shift, change shape, and eventually dissolve. Shadows may fall, but the sky itself remains unchanged. The narratives we cling to, success, recognition, approval, gain substance only because we insist they define our worth. Clinging amplifies anxiety. The mind interprets importance as survival, and suddenly every comment, every overlooked opportunity feels like a verdict. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Suffering is not mandated by circumstance. It is manufactured internally by the stories and judgments we habitually repeat. Recognizing this is the first step toward freedom, the moment when the mind begins to disentangle itself from its own compulsions. Once we notice these stories, a subtle shift occurs. The space between stimulus and response begins to open. We are no longer automatically bound to our narratives. The compulsive need to defend, explain, or perform diminishes because the imagined authority of these thoughts has dissolved. Anxiety, often born not from events but from anticipation, projection, or fear of judgment, begins to soften. Each imagined catastrophe, each mental rehearsal of failure, is revealed as an unnecessary expenditure of energy. That energy can now be directed toward deliberate engagement with reality, attentive action, and internal cultivation of virtue. Seneca writes, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The realization that the majority of our suffering is self-created allows clarity to emerge. We begin to live more intentionally, seeing events for what they are, rather than coloring them with exaggerated stakes. By examining assumptions, questioning stories, and observing their impermanence, the mind grows lighter. Decisions become aligned with principles, not fear. Actions arise from reason, not compulsion. The first layer of true freedom unfolds quietly, yet profoundly, shaping the mind's capacity to respond rather than react. The distinction between what is within our control and what is not becomes increasingly clear. Life flows whether we resist or release it. The sun rises, the wind shifts, and seasons turn without our permission. Yet our thoughts, choices, and virtues remain fully ours to govern. By focusing attention on what can be influenced, we conserve energy, reduce unnecessary anxiety, and reclaim mental space. Aligning effort with what is within our power produces calmness, intentionality, and efficiency. Fear of uncontrollable outcomes loses its grip, and we respond to the world with clarity rather than compulsion. Each moment, once fraught with imagined stakes, becomes an opportunity to practice virtue and deliberate attention. Work, relationships, and decisions are approached with steadiness, and the energy once spent resisting the inevitable is now available for meaningful engagement. With presence comes depth. When the mind is no longer fragmented by anxiety or expectation, life becomes tangible in its immediacy. Ordinary moments, walking, listening, observing, tasting, speaking, reveal layers of richness previously unnoticed. Attention can rest fully on what exists rather than on projections of what might happen or should happen. Marcus Aurelius's advice resonates. Confine yourself to the present. Presence cultivates perception, insight, and a quiet joy arising from engagement itself, unburdened by compulsion. Relationships become authentic. Conversations are no longer tests of worth. Actions and responses flow naturally from observation, empathy, and reason. Empathy, freed from fear or expectation, deepens. Listening becomes deliberate. Speaking becomes honest. Connection is no longer transactional, but alive with understanding and clarity. The ordinary reveals its depth when observed with intentional attention, and life itself begins to feel lighter, richer, and more vivid. This clarity extends to work and purpose. Effort is no longer a measure of worth or a performance to be evaluated. Each action, whether mundane or monumental, becomes a practice in virtue. Marcus Aurelius' teaching applies: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Work is transformed into an exercise in deliberate attention, integrity, and alignment with principles. Tasks are approached with focus and care, free from the weight of imagined judgment. Even challenges and setbacks are reframed as opportunities to cultivate patience, resilience, and wisdom. The mind, no longer enslaved by expectation, experiences clarity, freedom, and a sense of purposeful engagement in every endeavor. Success is measured internally by alignment and virtue, not externally by applause or recognition. Ultimately, joy emerges as a natural consequence of this practice. By acting as if nothing matters, detaching from imagined stakes and compulsive attachment, we paradoxically discover the inherent weight and value of life. Love, forgiveness, and laughter flow more freely. Change, loss, and death are no longer terrifying because they are understood as part of the natural rhythm. Life is not denied or avoided. It is fully embraced, danced with grace, rather than wrestled with force. The art of living lightly, as the Stoics envisioned, allows a mind unshackled by fear or obsession to experience clarity, resilience, and freedom. Every moment becomes alive with potential, observation, and deliberate engagement, cultivating a life rich with presence, insight, and authenticity. If you have found yourself reflecting on these ideas, subscribing is more than a simple click. It is a choice to continue exploring clarity, freedom, and virtue alongside a community committed to reflection and mindful living. Subscribing is a commitment to yourself, a step toward cultivating presence, awareness, and the quiet strength to live intentionally. The more you observe life, the clearer the line becomes between what is within your control and what is not. So much of human energy is spent wrestling with circumstances that will never bend to our will, trying to shape reality as though it were clay in our hands. The sun rises whether we notice or not. The wind shifts without our permission. Storms arrive unannounced, and seasons change regardless of our plans. To resist these natural flows is to invite tension, frustration, and anxiety. Yet within this same reality, there is a sphere that remains entirely ours: our responses, our intentions, our choices. The power of focus lies not in demanding that the world conform, but in cultivating mastery over the part we can influence. At first, this distinction can feel subtle, almost imperceptible. Life has a way of convincing us that external events are inseparable from our well-being. A missed opportunity, an unkind word, or a failure of circumstance often feels like an assault on the self. But when the mind begins to disentangle the external from the internal, the liberation is immediate. Anxiety diminishes because effort is no longer squandered on resisting the inevitable. Energy once lost in futile struggle becomes available for purposeful action. When you align effort with what you can influence, your thoughts, choices, and virtues, each decision becomes precise, intentional, and impactful. Nothing is wasted. The serenity that emerges is not passive resignation, but an active clarity, a conscious acceptance of reality as it is, coupled with deliberate action where change is possible. This principle applies to every corner of existence. In relationships, we cannot dictate how another person thinks, feels, or reacts. In work, we cannot control market fluctuations, competition, or the unpredictable outcomes of our endeavors. In life more broadly, we cannot ensure that circumstances will align perfectly with our desires. The Stoics observed that suffering arises not from what happens to us, but from the misplaced belief that it should not happen. When you release the illusion of control over externals, your attention becomes sharper, your choices cleaner, and your engagement with the world more grounded. Focusing on what is within your power prevents waste and cultivates a life of deliberate attention, free from the mental clutter of impossibilities. There is a profound psychological shift that occurs when you fully inhabit this perspective. Each time an event unfolds beyond your control, the mind no longer leaps to resistance. Instead, observation, reflection, and measured response take its place. Anger fades, disappointment softens, and frustration diminishes because the mind is no longer entangled in illusion. The space created by acceptance allows for intentional growth, strategic action, and the cultivation of virtues like courage, wisdom, and temperance. The world does not bend. It has no obligation to, yet you remain sovereign within the realm of your own choices. This sovereignty is not arrogance, nor is it withdrawal. It is the profound recognition that control is internal, and that external pressures are best met with reasoned engagement rather than frantic struggle. Even our perception of time is transformed when we operate from this understanding. When we expend effort attempting to control uncontrollable events, time feels scarce, hurried, and tense. Worries multiply and compound, creating the sensation of perpetual urgency. Conversely, focusing on what can be directed, our thoughts, actions, and virtues, restores a sense of spaciousness. Each moment can be lived intentionally rather than anxiously. The mind is freed from the endless loop of imagined scenarios and speculative anxieties. Each decision, each action, each interaction becomes aligned with our inner principles rather than external expectations. The energy once devoted to resisting what cannot be changed is now available to cultivate insight, resilience, and connection. Even seemingly mundane aspects of daily life reveal this principle in action. Traffic delays, unreturned messages, sudden changes in plans, these are minor disruptions that often provoke outsized emotional reactions. Observing how these events naturally occur outside your control illuminates the futility of resistance. Yet within each, there exists the opportunity to respond thoughtfully. A pause, a measured breath, a choice not to react impulsively. These small exercises in internal governance accumulate over time. Life becomes less a battlefield and more a practice ground for self-mastery. The mind learns that power lies not in control over externals, but in the discipline of its own faculties and in the cultivation of virtues that guide action consistently, regardless of circumstance. Through consistent practice, attention to what is controllable becomes habitual. Reactions are tempered, perspectives widened, and anxiety diminishes. Life retains its unpredictability, yet the mind becomes a steady vessel, capable of navigating turmoil with clarity and grace. By distinguishing between what is ours to shape and what is not, we cultivate both serenity and effectiveness. The effort we expend aligns with action that matters. The mental space freed from futile attempts at control becomes fertile ground for wisdom, presence, and resilience. In this conscious engagement with what can be influenced, we discover the true power of freedom, sovereignty over the self amidst the immensity of a world that unfolds without our command. Clinging to outcomes, approval, and imagined importance consumes more energy than most of us realize. Every disappointment feels like a weight pressing against the chest. Every rejection a mirror showing some flaw we've internalized as absolute. Yet when the mind begins to release its insistence on control, the way we perceive these events transforms. Life's challenges no longer appear as verdicts on our character, but as invitations to practice discernment, patience, and resilience. Rejection, failure, or disappointment become data points, not indictments. They illuminate our habitual reactions, reveal attachments, and highlight where our focus may have strayed. This subtle shift from perceiving events as judgments to seeing them as reflections creates a space where clarity can emerge, and from that space, intentional action arises naturally, unburdened by fear of judgment or imagined consequences. It is astonishing how much of human suffering is tied to the compulsion to be significant. We act as though recognition, reward, or status determines our worth, yet these external markers are fleeting and unreliable. When we grasp this, a new paradox reveals itself. By loosening the grip on significance, significance begins to appear organically in life. Moments once unnoticed, the spontaneous laughter of a friend, the quiet insight of an idea, the simple satisfaction of well-chosen action become profound in their immediacy. We begin to notice the depth of ordinary experiences, not because they are measured against imagined standards, but because they exist fully and unfiltered. Even our perception of failure transforms under this lens. What once appeared catastrophic now reveals patterns, lessons, and opportunities for adjustment. Each misstep is analyzed not for shame, but for insight. The Stoics emphasized that judgment creates suffering. The act of seeing failures objectively, without coloring them with imagined stakes, cultivates resilience. We become capable of responding thoughtfully, learning efficiently, and moving forward with calm intention rather than reactive anxiety. The mind, once dominated by fear of loss or humiliation, becomes a tool for discernment, reflection, and deliberate action. This detachment from outcome does not breed passivity or indifference. It fosters engagement with precision and clarity. Actions are no longer clouded by worry, but arise from reasoned understanding of cause and effect, virtue and practical possibility. Energy is redirected from resisting circumstance toward what can be influenced, our thoughts, habits, and responses. Ultimately, the practice of letting go of unnecessary attachment to significance reveals a paradoxical truth. Meaning is amplified, not diminished. Life becomes richer, more vivid, and more aligned with authentic values. We act with presence, integrity, and intentionality, while the noise of imagined judgment falls away. Our focus shifts from defending an arbitrary sense of worth to cultivating inner virtues that carry enduring value. The mind learns to perceive life clearly, to engage fully, and to find contentment in effort itself. By releasing the compulsion to fight for significance, we discover that happiness and fulfillment are not earned through external recognition. They are uncovered in the quiet mastery of perspective, the alignment of action with principle, and the freedom to engage without attachment to outcome. The insight gained here ripples across every facet of life. Each day presents challenges that once would have triggered anxiety or fear, but now are met with measured response and discernment. Social interactions, professional efforts, and creative pursuits become arenas of mindful engagement rather than stages for performance or judgment. The liberation from clinging allows observation without overreaction, participation without obsession, and effort without compulsion. This is the essence of Stoic resilience, clarity, presence, and the freedom to act with virtue in a world that unfolds independently of our demands or expectations. Through sustained practice, this shift becomes habitual. Happiness no longer hinges on approval, significance no longer depends on external validation, and disappointment loses its sting. Life flows more smoothly, not because circumstances have changed, but because the mind has recalibrated its responses. Each moment is observed, reflected upon, and engaged with deliberately, and the wisdom gained from this approach compounds over time. Reactions are tempered, attention is focused, and energy is conserved. In releasing the compulsive need for importance, we reclaim both inner freedom and presence, discovering a deeper, more resilient form of contentment that thrives amidst the unpredictability of life. There is a profound shift that occurs when the mind stops straining for control and begins to inhabit the present moment fully. Time, once experienced as a series of obligations, deadlines, and imagined consequences, stretches into clarity and possibility. Every sensation, every detail, every nuance that previously went unnoticed begins to take on significance simply because attention rests upon it. The rustle of leaves, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the sound of a distant conversation, these are no longer background noise, but a rich tapestry of existence to be felt and appreciated. In this state, life ceases to be a performance for others or a test of self-worth. It becomes immediate, tangible, and alive. The Stoics taught that the mind is the gateway to freedom. When awareness is cultivated, the ordinary transforms into extraordinary, because presence itself is an act of engagement, a form of conscious participation in the unfolding of reality. The liberation of attention from fear, judgment, and imagined expectation allows a subtler, more profound kind of clarity to emerge. Mental chatter, the endless speculation about outcomes, the anxiety about what might happen, and the self-imposed obligations to prove one's worth, loses its urgency. Without these burdens, the mind can rest lightly, noticing what is rather than projecting what should be. Every act, whether pouring a cup of tea, walking along a quiet street, or listening to a friend, becomes a microcosm of lived experience, complete in itself. Each moment becomes a portal through which insight, creativity, and connection flow, unimpeded by distraction or obsession. By dwelling fully in the present, the mind sheds the weight of imagined significance and discovers a rhythm in which awareness and action are harmonized. This shift also deepens the texture of perception. Previously unnoticed details, colors, textures, sounds, patterns of movement become vivid, as if the world itself has gained new depth. Ordinary tasks, like preparing a meal or folding clothes, become opportunities for engagement rather than obligations. The experience of eating, speaking, walking, or observing becomes a meditation in motion. Seneca described a similar state when he wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." The richness of life is not created by grand gestures or monumental achievements. It is revealed in the clarity of perception that arises when the mind is no longer fragmented by fear, judgment, or imagined stakes. Presence allows the ordinary to reveal its beauty, the mundane to disclose its value, and the simple act of living to feel like a profound exercise in participation. As presence deepens, attention becomes less scattered and more precise. The mind no longer flits from worry to anticipation, from regret to longing. Instead, awareness rests gently on the unfolding of reality, capturing what is as it is, rather than what is imagined. This heightened state of presence has a remarkable effect on emotion. Anxiety softens, frustration loses its edge, and even grief can be held with gentleness rather than resistance. Without the overlay of imagined consequences, we can witness our internal states without being overwhelmed by them. Emotions are allowed to exist fully without dominating attention, creating a form of psychological resilience rooted in observation rather than suppression. By concentrating on conscious engagement and letting the rest unfold naturally, we cultivate a mind capable of navigating complexity with steadiness, openness, and clarity. The present becomes a sanctuary in which internal states are observed, understood, and integrated, rather than feared or manipulated. Presence also amplifies the quality of our interactions with the world and others. Listening becomes deeper, more attentive, and more responsive. Conversation is no longer a performance or an exercise in impression management, but an exchange grounded in awareness and mutual attention. Creativity flourishes because the mind is no longer preoccupied with judgment, comparison, or imagined standards of success. Each decision, each action, each gesture arises from a place of clarity and intentionality, unclouded by compulsive thought. Aristotle reflected on the natural alignment of action and awareness, noting that pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. When attention is liberated from fear or imagined evaluation, the work itself, the engagement itself, becomes the source of fulfillment and insight. The shift toward presence changes our perception of time itself. What once felt rushed or scarce expands into a continuum of opportunity and reflection. We notice rhythms, patterns, and the flow of life that previously went unrecognized. Each moment is complete in itself, sufficient without external validation or imagined urgency. The mind becomes a participant rather than a spectator, observing without interference while also acting with discernment and integrity. Socrates' observation resonates here. Beware the barrenness of a busy life. Activity without presence produces motion, but not engagement. By inhabiting the present, we transform motion into meaningful action and observation into insight, cultivating both depth and clarity in experience. Ultimately, this awareness fosters a lighter, more resilient heart. Freed from the compulsion to perform, prove, or anticipate, we can approach life with openness, curiosity, and gratitude. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, not because it changes, but because perception changes. Life is no longer a rehearsal for an imagined audience or a series of tests for approval. It is a field of conscious participation, a series of moments to be attended to fully, each rich in texture, insight, and meaning. By cultivating presence, we reclaim the vibrancy of experience, the clarity of perception, and the freedom to engage with life on our own terms, grounded in Stoic wisdom and the attentive observation of the world as it truly is. Relationships are among the clearest mirrors of our inner state, and they respond directly to the level of presence and freedom we carry. When we are tethered to external validation, every interaction becomes a test, a measure of worth, a negotiation for approval, a silent scorecard of social performance. Words are chosen not for clarity or truth, but for effect. Gestures are calculated to impress or appease. The heart of connection is replaced by the mind's constant tallying, and what should be an exchange of understanding becomes an exhausting performance. Yet, when the mind is unburdened by the need to prove itself, these interactions shift in quality. Conversations cease to feel like examinations, and relationships stop being arenas in which self-worth is staked. What emerges instead is authenticity, an unforced engagement that is profoundly liberating. The absence of compulsive calculation allows presence to enter fully, creating the conditions for dialogue, intimacy,